The sterile smell of the hospital had finally faded from the air, replaced by the familiar sense of our own home, the faint, lingering spice from last night's dinner, the detergent on clean sheets, the unique, comforting fragrance that was just her. But something fundamental had shifted, irrevocably. It wasn't just the physical scars, the way she moved with a new caution, the occasional wince she couldn't quite hide. It was deeper, quieter, residing in the silence between us after the lights went out. Before the accident, that screech of tires, the sickening crunch of metal that still echoed in the hollow spaces of my skull on bad nights, our life together had been full. Vibrant. And yeah, a significant part of that fullness was physical. We were one of those couples, the kind with a high burn rate, finding solace and joy and release in each other's bodies several times a week. It felt natural, essential, a vital current running between us. It wasn't just sex, it was connection, affirmation, a language spoken when words weren't enough. Then came the chaos. The sirens, the blur of worried faces, the long, agonizing hours in waiting rooms. Surgeries followed, a brutal procession of scalpels and sutures, and the terrifying vulnerability of the human body laid bare. The spinal disc replacement was the big one, the anchor around which her recovery pivoted. Months bled into a year, then two, filled with physical therapy sessions that left her both stronger and utterly drained, smaller procedures to clean up the edges of the damage, and a slow, arduous climb back towards something resembling normalcy. Through it all, my focus was solely on her healing, her comfort, her getting back on her feet. Physical intimacy, the kind we'd shared so freely, was simply off the table. Unthinkable. There was too much pain, too much fragility. My own needs felt distant, secondary, wrapped in a thick blanket of worry and adrenaline. I tamped them down, buried them deep. It was easy, at first. Essential. As the physical pain became more manageable, as she regained mobility and strength, we started to talk about everything else. Rebuilding our routines, rediscovering shared hobbies, navigating the lingering emotional landscape of trauma. The conversation about resuming our sexual life loomed, a quiet, intimidating peak on the horizon. I had already, in the silent chambers of my own mind, processed a difficult truth. The accident had done terrible things. Beyond the visible scars and the altered gait, there was the nerve damage. Significant, the doctors said, especially there. She had explained it to me, her voice quiet, a strange mix of matter-of-factness and underlying sadness. I just don't feel much of anything, honey. It's like that part of me is numb. Not painful, just absent. The complex web of sensation, the thrilling build-up, the release, gone. A void where pleasure used to reside. Based on this, I had made my difficult peace. Our life had changed. This part of it, a beautiful, vital part, was over. I mourned it, privately, a silent vigil for something precious lost. I started figuring out how I would manage, how I would navigate my own high libido in this new reality. It felt like another layer of grief, but one I believed I had to process alone, to shield her from any perceived burden. I loved her fiercely, more than ever, for her strength and resilience. Our connection ran so much deeper than the physical. We would be okay. Different, but okay. So when she brought it up, tentatively at first, then with a surprising resolve, wanting to talk about us, about intimacy, I thought I knew where the conversation was headed. Acknowledging the loss together, perhaps finding new ways to be close that didn't involve that. Instead, she floored me. I want to try again, she said, her eyes searching mine in the soft evening light. I want us to be together like that again. My breath caught in my throat. Honey, I started, my voice thick with emotion, you don't have to. Not for me. I know. I know you can't feel it anymore. You don't have to force yourself. The words tumbled out, my carefully constructed acceptance plan laid bare. I love you. That hasn't changed. We'll figure things out. I can take care of myself. Please don't feel obligated. She reached across the small space between us on the couch and took my hand. Her grip was firm. I'm not forcing myself, she insisted, her voice gentle but unwavering. I want to. I want to be close to you. I want to make you feel good. A faint, sad smile touched her lips. And honestly? Knowing I can still do that for you, that satisfies something in me. It makes me feel, not broken. Like I can still give you something important. Her sincerity was palpable. It also crushed me under a fresh, unexpected weight of guilt. How could she, the one who had endured the physical trauma, the loss of her own sensation, be focused on my pleasure? It felt inherently wrong, fundamentally unfair. My carefully processed grief for our shared intimacy suddenly felt selfish and small compared to her profound loss, and now she was offering this sacrifice, this act of love born from a place of damage. The first few times we tried, it was a disaster. Utter, soul-crushing failure. The air in the bedroom felt thick, heavy with unspoken history and present awkwardness. Her presence, her willingness, instead of being a comfort, amplified my internal turmoil. All I could see was the disconnect, my body's expectation of a shared experience, and the stark reality that she was present for me, not for herself in the same way. My mind raced. Is she really okay with this? Is this secretly painful for her, emotionally if not physically? Am I a terrible person for even considering this? The guilt was a physical thing, a tightening in my chest, a knot in my stomach. My body, usually so responsive to her touch, refused to cooperate. It felt like a betrayal from within, my own biology staging a protest against the emotional landscape. I couldn't get out of my own head. The harder I tried to just be present, to connect, the more the intrusive thoughts hammered at me. After the first failed attempt, I mumbled an excuse, something about being tired, and retreated to the guest room. I spent hours there, curled on the unfamiliar mattress, the silence amplifying my misery. I cried until my throat was raw, tears of frustration, sadness, and overwhelming shame. Shame that I couldn't perform, shame that my own issues were overshadowing her strength, shame that she was making this incredible gesture and I was responding with dysfunction. She was the one actually suffering the physical loss, enduring the aftermath of the accident in her own body, and here I was, having a full-blown pity party in another room because I couldn't get an erection due to my own emotional baggage. It felt pathetic. It happened again. And again. Each failure chipped away at me, reinforcing the narrative in my head that I was broken, selfish, incapable of handling this new reality with grace. The tension in the house, though unspoken by her, felt immense to me. Slowly, painstakingly, things started to shift. After several more failed attempts, and countless hours wrestling with my own demons, I managed to carve out a small space in my mind where I could push the guilt and the internal commentary aside, just enough. It required a conscious effort, a deliberate act of compartmentalization that felt unnatural and exhausting. But I couldn't bear the thought of causing her pain by constantly failing, or worse, by making her feel undesirable or that her offer wasn't valued. She was trying, and I owed it to her, and to us, to try too. We found a new rhythm, tentative at first, then settling into something resembling routine. She was patient, infinitely so. Her focus remained on me, on my pleasure. She would initiate, often with a gentle touch or a quiet word, and I would try my best to meet her there. I learned to perform despite the emotional weight, to compartmentalize the guilt, to focus on the physical act and the fact that I was giving her something, even if it wasn't a shared ascent to pleasure. I would stimulate her in the limited ways I could, exploring what little sensation remained or finding other areas that were responsive. It felt inadequate. I couldn't bring her the same kind of release, the same physical peak we used to chase together. I knew it, and I suspected she did too, even though she never said it. Are you sure you're okay with this? I'd ask, often after, when the tension had dissipated slightly, a nervous habit I couldn't break. You don't resent me? For this? She would look at me, her eyes full of genuine affection, and shake her head. Never, she'd say, or there's nothing to resent. I love you. This is okay. I want this. And in those moments, I almost believed it completely. Almost. but the guilt was a persistent shadow. It never truly left. It would recede for a while, allowing us to find some semblance of connection, some moments of intimacy that felt less fraught. Then it would surge back, often unexpectedly. I'd be lying awake next to her, the quiet of the night amplifying my thoughts, and the unfairness of it all would wash over me again. She gives so much, feels so little in return, and I'm still struggling. I became adept at hiding it. If I felt the familiar knot tightening in my chest, the prickle of tears behind my eyes, I'd excuse myself. Go for a walk, stay up late working on something, pretend to be engrossed in my phone. I'd do my crying in the shower, letting the water mix with my tears, or in the garage, yelling silently into the space between stored boxes. Anywhere she wouldn't see, anywhere I wouldn't put that burden on her, wouldn't make her feel like her efforts weren't enough, or that my unhappiness was her fault. She had enough to carry. Lately, the guilt had been particularly bad. A dark cloud settling over me, heavy and suffocating. I couldn't pinpoint a single trigger, just a cumulative effect of the years, the quiet sacrifice I perceived her making, my own inability to fully accept it without internal consequence. The last few nights, she had tried to initiate gentle invitations with her touch, her smile. And I had had to decline. Each time felt like a small failure, a step backward. Just tired, honey, I'd murmur, turning away, the lie tasting like ash in my mouth. I hated saying it. But saying the real reason, admitting that the simple act of trying filled me with such profound sadness and guilt that I knew I would crumble, would start weeping right there in front of her, that felt impossible. That felt like inflicting pain on her, confirming every fear she might secretly harbor about her changed body and its impact on me. It felt like admitting I was still, after all this time, not okay with a reality she had already bravely embraced. It's messed up, I know, but there's a part of me that was, in a perverse, twisted way, happier when I genuinely believed we would never have physical intimacy again. Because then, at least, the lack of satisfaction would have been shared. We both would have been abstaining, living a life without that particular connection. It would have been a shared void, a mutual state of being unsatisfied in that one area. Her current willingness, her insistence on giving me pleasure while experiencing none herself, highlights the imbalance, the fundamental shift that I still struggle to reconcile. It makes me feel like a burden, a selfish receiver of a gift given at her own physical expense. Putting this out there, even anonymously, is hard. I don't know who to talk to. Friends wouldn't understand, or they'd say the wrong thing, or I'd feel like I was betraying her privacy. Family is out of the question. So, I came here. To vent. To put the words down in the quiet, hoping they might dissipate into the ether instead of swirling endlessly in my head. Thank you, Internet Void, for letting me spill this heavy load. Reading the few responses that trickled in after I posted didn't help. In fact, some of them twisted the knife. It made me feel worse. Of course, I know sex isn't just vaginal intercourse. I know there are other ways to connect, to be intimate. We do those things. We hold hands, we cuddle on the couch, we kiss, we find other forms of physical affection. But that specific act, the one where she insists on focusing on me, where her lack of sensation is most starkly highlighted in the traditional dynamic, that's the one that cracks me open. That's where the guilt is sharpest. And I know I need therapy. God, do I know. Every logical cell in my body screams it. I am a mess of guilt, performance anxiety, and unresolved grief. This isn't just about sex, it's about my inability to graciously receive my wife's love in the form she's offering it, tangled up with my own feelings of inadequacy and sadness for what we lost. But knowing I need therapy doesn't magically conjure up the funds. We're swimming in medical debt from her accident, the surgeries, the hospital stays, the ongoing physical therapy, the prescriptions. On top of that, regular life expenses feel heavier than ever. I'm not in some privileged position where I can just call a therapist and schedule weekly sessions to unpack my failings, as one comment put it. It's a luxury I can't afford right now. I know my wife wants to please me. I know her love is behind her insistence. knowing that, understanding it intellectually, doesn't magically fix the disconnect in my own head. It doesn't make my body cooperate when my mind is screaming about how wrong and unfair and heavy the situation feels. It doesn't stop the wave of sadness from crashing over me sometimes. I know I don't get to demand support for my issues, especially when my wife is the one who suffered the physical trauma. I know coming to Reddit isn't a substitute for professional help. I guess I just hoped for, I don't know, a little bit of understanding, maybe. A sign that someone else out there navigates these impossible spaces. Even if I didn't know what that something was, the hope of it was enough to make me post. And yes, I know I'm in the wrong. I'm the one with the hang-ups, the dysfunctions, the inability to just accept the love and intimacy being offered without tying it into knots of guilt. My wife is a victim of the accident, yes, but in this specific dynamic, I feel like she's also a victim of my issues, my inability to simply be present and grateful. I wish I could stop being what I am, stop feeling the way I do. I wish I could flip a switch and turn off the guilt, the sadness, the performance anxiety. But I can't. All I can do is my best. Keep trying. Keep hiding the tears. Keep accepting her love in the way she offers it, even when it hurts. Keep hoping that someday, somehow, the weight will ease. Edit again, apparently take a drink, grab her butt, and act like a horny teenager was the secret play to make things work for us. Reading that comment, one of the blunter, almost absurd suggestions in the thread, felt like a splash of cold water. It was so utterly detached from the tangled mess of emotion I'd laid bare, so simple, so physical. It wasn't about guilt or sacrifice or nerve damage. It was just about raw, uncomplicated desire, messy and imperfect. And maybe, just maybe, in its sheer, idiotic simplicity, it cut through the Gordian knot I'd tied myself into. Maybe the problem wasn't the complex emotional calculus I was performing. Maybe the problem was that I was thinking too much. Analyzing too much. Grieving too much. Maybe, just maybe, sometimes you just have to bypass the head and go straight for the messy, imperfect, resilient body. It wasn't an instant cure. The guilt didn't vanish. The sadness still lingered in the quiet corners. But the sheer, unexpected absurdity of the advice, the permission it seemed to grant for imperfection, for roughness, for just being in the moment rather than dissecting it, lodged itself in my brain. It suggested a different pathway, one that didn't require sophisticated emotional navigation, just action. Simple, slightly foolish, fundamentally human action. It wasn't the end of the struggle, not by a long shot. But it was a crack in the wall I had built around myself. A hint that maybe the way through wasn't more thought, more guilt, more self-recrimination, but something far more primitive. Something that didn't make logical sense, but might, just might, resonate on a different frequency. A frequency where desire, however complicated by circumstance, could still find a way to speak. The journey was far from over, the path still uneven and shadowed by doubt. But for the first time in a long time, a tiny, fragile seed of possibility had been planted. The possibility that perhaps, even in this altered landscape, joy, connection, and yes, even a clumsy, imperfect kind of pleasure, might still be found. And that maybe, just maybe, the key wasn't intellectual understanding or emotional perfection, but simply the courage to reach out, a little awkwardly, a little blindly, in the dark. The courage to just grab on. And see what happens.